to the show with your friend and mine. So tell me, Doctor Squee, who's it gonna be this time? We like to hear you talk, but we love to hear you listen. And if you are not subscribed, you won't know what you're missing. So welcome to the Doctor Squee Show. Welcome to the Doctor Squee Show. Welcome to the Doctor Squee Show. Headphones up. Here we go.
Hello and welcome to the Doctor Squee Show. We're back, baby. I'm Doctor Squee. This is my show. So this is sort of like a little bit of a soft reboot to the Doctor Squee Show. We're going to start up with some proper shows as of next week. Just for a bit of background for anyone who hasn't been keeping up. Basically, what has been going on is like I finished doing the radio version of this show. Essentially, I wanted to just concentrate on the video version. I want to build that up. I want to build up my own kind of like brand. I hate using that word, but my own presence, if you will, online. So what I would do is every week for the radio show, I would always do it on Tuesday at the same time. Whereas the video version, I would put out as and when people were available to be interviewed. I just did it live, and just whatever time that was, that's when it went out. I wanted to get some consistency to that. So from now on, every Thursday at 7, when this is going out, I pre-recorded this, but it's going to be interview time. Or, you know, maybe the odd one every now and again where I just talk to the camera if we've got a little bit of break from the interviews. So yeah, so basically, sorry, I'm just getting a bit distracted by that light in the background. This will also happen. I will get distracted. That's a bit better. Trying not to play on the camera. Anyway, deal with that later. Where was I? Oh, you see, this is like already falling off the rails so early. But basically the idea is, yeah. So if guests aren't available on a Thursday at 7 o'clock, when this will be going out every week so I can build up a regular audience, I'll pre-record it and it'll go out much like I'm pre-recording this. So, yeah, basically the Doctor Squee Show will be back next week. I will say this. No guest book so far. I've been emailing, I've been messaging. There's a few people I'm still kind of like maybe in conversation with. So it's going to come back one way or another, even if it's just me talking to the camera next week. But the idea is like, essentially the one thing which I would say when people ask me about these interviews and how I get them and how I get these guests, the simple truth is you've just got to be really comfortable with hearing no. I don't usually like to give advice generally to podcasters. One thing, if you're going to do interviews, you got to be comfortable with hearing no. You're going to have loads of people you email off to. If you even hear back from them at all, they will reply to saying, sorry, our client isn't available this time if you've gone through an agent, or sorry, I just can't fit it in. And sometimes, you know, if you ask nicely, they might be up for you meshing again in a few months. Sometimes they're not. Like, I always do ask that question because it's like, if they've just gone, they're busy right now, I just reply, just going, look, is this your polite way of saying that they're not interested in doing it, which is absolutely fine? Or can I email again in another 6 months? Sometimes I reply saying email back. Sometimes I reply going, well, sorry, just isn't going to happen. People are usually very lovely, but there is so much time when you're trying to sort out these interviews, and it's just, it does eventually get to you. You know, it's like near the end of my tenure on SW20, I got so many kind of no's and I just got frustrated, and I just started doing episodes where I play music and talk to the audience, which is really lovely. Don't get me wrong. I love doing stuff like this, and talking to the camera, I think, helps hone your skills and make you be more precise with what you're saying, which then filters back. So when you've got an interview, it's even easier not to kind of like repeat yourself, not to stutter, not to although I'll probably get loads of messages now saying I was umming all the way through this, but not that I've noticed. Just get distracted by lamps, that's all. So that's your general update. But yeah, so one way or another, the show's going to be every Thursday from now on at 7 o'clock, and it's going to be a good time, and I hope you're going to join us. Yeah, I'm just really looking forward to just concentrating on one thing and just keeping myself emailing people. I think I work well with the deadline as well. So if I say next Thursday we're going to be back on, I know I'll be messaging people more diligently, asking them to interview. That's the problem when you get a bit of time off, because basically I was due to do my last SW20 show on Boxing Day. Unfortunately, I was ill at the time, so it kind of was weeks later. And I did want to give myself a little bit of a break and, you know, give myself most of January off, apart from doing my last Doctor Squee Show on the radio. But that's way too easy to just then go, oh yeah, but I could give myself another week. No one's really replying. I know I haven't really sent out that many messages, and it just kind of like snowballs into not doing it again. and that ain't going to happen with this show. So I thought I'd do this, and as well as talking about the show, I thought I'd talk to you about a few things I've been watching recently. So just make a bit of content for this episode. I'll talk in a minute about Marvel's Echo, and I did hear that by the way. We'll talk about Marvel's Echo in a little bit, but first of all, I want to talk about a play which I went to see. Me and some friends who call ourselves the Geek High Council, just a little group of friends who go to events. We go to the Sci-Fi Weekender, which, by the way, sorry, I should also talk about that. I'll talk about that at the end as well. But we're on Strange Things right now. Let's stay focused, Squee. Let's not go off the rails once again, like with your lump shenanigans. But Stranger Things, the stage show. Sorry, did I say the musical? I keep on saying that. But anyway, it's the stage show. And it's called Stranger Things, The First Shadow. Really spectacular. I'm going to give you my review in a minute. But what I did was, there's a friend of mine from the Sci-Fi Weekender, that's Corin Ward. And he wrote the most wonderful summation of the stage show. He actually works in the theatre himself, as well as being a wonderful puppeteer and a lovely guy. So I thought I'd just talk you through his review before I kind of like add my notes. So this is review from Facebook. Stranger Things, The First Shadows preview, a chilling trip to Hawkins 1950. So yeah, the show is set as a prequel to the original TV show. Calling all Stranger Things fanatics, The First Shadow isn't merely a play, it's a mind-bending portal straight into the heart of Hawkins itself. The iconic synth score blasts through the speakers, transporting you to the sleepy 1950s town where shadows dance at the edges of normalcy and young Henry Creel teeters on the brink of darkness. Forget phenomenal, the actors are possessed. Lewis McCartney channels a chilling innocence as Henry, gradually morphing into the villain we know and fear. Ella Karuna Williams imbues Patty Creel with a heartbreaking vulnerability that will wrench your heart. And every member of the ensemble breathes life into Hawkins, making you feel like you're right there alongside them. Well, sometimes you are, with the actors coming into the auditorium, even on the grand circle. Yeah, that's spectacular when they kind of like, they start interacting with you. That's my editorializing, not Corin's. Oh, my thing's playing up. Sorry, yeah. But The First Shadow is more than just stellar performances. Prepare to be awestruck by the technical wizardry. Lighting and sound weave a spell of suspense with flickering bulbs, including the house lights, conjuring the upside-down tendrils and pulsating baseline mirroring the growing threat. The set design is meticulous homage to the show's iconic imagery, making you feel like you've stepped into your favorite scenes. The First Shadow isn't just a prequel, it's a revelation, adding depth and darkness to the already rich tapestry of Stranger Things. Whether you're a diehard fan or a curious newcomer, this is a must-see. It's a 5-star spectacle that pushes the boundaries of theatrical storytelling, leaving you breathless, chills crawling up your spine, and begging for the next season. So drop your egos and run to grab a ticket. Drop your egos. Egos, of course. Stranger Things. Yeah, I would just echo all of that. To add my thoughts, though, the special effects, as Corin's mentioned there, are beyond state of the art. They've got this wonderful effect when you're going into, like, there are mild spoilers, I'm going to say. I'm not going to give away any real big things, but mild spoilers, because otherwise it's impossible to talk about it. There's one effect where they've got the kind of like these red lines which come up and down and they kind of cross each other, and that's when you're in the upside down. It's a really nice effect. You've got kind of got this this wonderful sound effects which goes with it as well. They do use every bit of the stage, so like it's really hard to describe, but there's side kind of pillars on the stage which usually are just, you know, outside the stage. They incorporate that into it. They incorporate the house lights into every move on stage when things can magically appear and disappear. And we're not just talking about small things. It's not this, but imagine like 1 minute you're looking at just someone standing there, and the next minute you've got a giant monster truck. They do something more spectacular than that. But that just gives you an idea. It's like they make things disappear and appear just at will. There are kind of bits which I assume are why work. Like, I had people who know special effects who can't figure it out. But Yeah, there's a wonderful thing which I think is wire work, where people seem to defy gravity, though. You know, with the best wire work in the world, I don't know how you set that up so it works so well. As someone who is neurodiverse, who's got ADHD, I'm not great with character names. So like I recognize the name of like the basically the parents and the kind of older townsfolk from Hawkins are abound in this play. But I didn't always like catch, oh, was that name of someone? Like I really should have done rewatch like my friend Jim did before we went to see this, but I want to go and really fresh. I want to like experience it sort of as its own thing. And now I'm going to do a rewatch of Stranger Things and try and track back who everyone was in the play, because that sort of thing does confuse me. But what I loved about this is that you don't need to have seen, you don't actually need to have seen the TV show, even though this is such a tie-in. I think you can just really walk in fresh and just enjoy a brand new, wonderful story, which this completely is. And, you know, the lead they've got, as Corin said there, this young man who's playing, again, mild spoilers, but essentially a new young man has come to Hawkins. He's trying to fit in, but he obviously has some secrets, and he has some strange things which have started happening around him, which he can't explain. And he's seen as a bit of a curse by his own family. And he's got to deal with all this and try not to get seduced by darkness and keep to the light. And the young man they have playing the lead is just spectacular. Like, you know, the emotional range he shows, the weird acting choices, because he's got to play a sort of like slight weirdness of this kind of effect which has come upon him. And his manner of delivery and his acting choices are just second to none. And all this from like a kid, what, 17, 18, something like that. Just couldn't believe it. It really is something to see. You do not want to miss this. If you get a chance, please head to London. I know that's kind of not everyone's London centric, including people around the world. I think this is for sure going to get at least a. Excuse me, 1 second. I'm just going to cough. It's the only thing about doing the show on my own. There's just dead air if I've got to press the cough button. Excuse me. But yeah, I think this is at least going to get a Broadway sort of version coming up, maybe a touring version. One thing I do think is going to happen is, even though obviously they're not going to make it so they have to have seen this show to watch Stranger Things season 5, I'd be amazed if they don't bleed over some of the details or some of the characters, you know, have them reappearing, you know, years later, obviously. And I could even see a world in which they tell a capsulized version of some of the events of the play, leaning into the action of this. I mean, there is a kind of strangeness to the fact that you've got all these older characters who went through these strange experiences. When all this starts happening with their kids, they don't care to mention it. By the way, yes, some weird stuff happened to me when I was a kid too. Like, let's talk about that. It does seem a little bit odd, but we'll allow it. Like, it's worth it for this play. It is just that good. So yeah, please do go. It's in London right now. I'm going to forget the theatre name. I want to say the Adelphi because that's where I'm going for Back to the Future. But look it up. It's in London. It's on the West End, and it's available to buy tickets now. You don't want to miss this. It really is a spectacular play and experience, really, overall. So moving on now, let's talk about Echo. And by the way, should also mention, you might be listening to this on podcast form. So that's the other thing which I'm doing for the show. I'm going to bring back the podcast. We're going to sort of like effectively see this as a bit of a season 2 of the show. You know, for anyone who is listening on the podcast, who maybe subscribed before and wonder where the show went, with the radio show and the video version and the podcast, not only was it confusing my guests which were coming on, like what is the show, but also it was just a lot to do. And now I can just record the show and put it straight onto the podcast feed, just rip the audio. Like there's a function on StreamYard, which I use to record, which allows me to do that straight away and just whack it straight up there. So from now on, I'm really going to do my best to just keep to like do the video version. Then the podcast version goes out straight afterwards. But Echo, yeah, this is obviously it's within the world of Marvel, so it's like there's always crossovers, but this pretty much is directly a sequel to the events in Hawkeye on Disney Plus. And also kind of obviously because of the Fisk of it all, if you're familiar with the world of Marvel. If you're not, this isn't going to be for you anyway. But Wilson Fisk was originally in Daredevil, so obviously links to that world as well. And it is really nicely opened. I'll say that. I'll start with the positive. So the first episode basically retells the events of, again, mild spoilers, but again, the events of Hawkeye. And it tells it from this perspective of Echo and how she came to be in the position she is when we go into the show proper. So it's 5 episodes. And I didn't really mind the fact they used one as a recap one, but also one which told it from her perspective. This is her story. So let's start it off where she started. Let's enrich those scenes by seeing a bit more. That was actually quite nice. I enjoyed that first episode. The casting's wonderful. The whole family is great. I'll talk a bit about the lead in a second, but just to pull up some names from IMDb. So we've got as the grandmother, Chula, we've got Tantu Cardinal, and as the grandfather, Graham Greene, who plays Scully. They're, to me, two of the real standouts as well, because just what acting gravitas. Like, they do bring, obviously, the world of Native America to us, but they feel so familiar to family members, which I know. And they're just so much fun. They're just so great. They can be kind of like really dramatic when they need to be. They could be hilarious. They're just they feel like your family. That's the only way I can describe it. But with, I say, Native American element thrown in. I love the fact that this does deal with so many progressive themes. Like, I was really in the bag with that for this, because I know some people find, for some reason, any progressive messaging to be distracting from anything else. I'm not that way. I feel like if you can tell me a really interesting story and set it in a world of disability through kind of Echo having a missing foot and part of her leg, and through her deafness, if you can tell stories about those, tell a story about the Native American world, which I know little about, and to weave in those 3 things, like 4 if you include being a woman in this world, these are all things which people suffer oppression from. And this never deals with her as a victim. It's okay to tell stories. Of course it is. And of course it's important to tell stories about how people are victimized. But it's also really nice to show how someone can just use these things as a benefit. How people can turn their disability into advantage. How they can turn their ancestry into knowledge to kind of share with the world. And, and how being a woman isn't weird. Like, I know that sounds really weird to say, but it's like, there are so many like times when women are on the short end of the stick. And I just think this just normalizes so many things. She is just a living, breathing, wonderful character. So they got the characters right. For me, the problem is there isn't really much story though here. Because yeah, you've got the kind of like the drama of her world, of the fact that I want to be really careful about spoilers, but let's just say she's at the beginning estranged from her family, and it's about how she interacts with them. But she spends so much of the story just like blanking them really and avoiding them, and them avoiding her. So you really don't get much of that interaction. It's just people talking about like what happened before, which again, I get you've got to do that for progression, but the arc of this story is that at the end of it, she becomes who she's going to be. Which again is a fine choice. They did it in Daredevil to much effect, and Daredevil gets a wonderful little cameo in this. But in Daredevil, there was action along the way. There was kind of like baddies to fight. There was on-running stories outside of what he was dealing with, trying to set up a lawyer's firm in Hell's Kitchen for no money, and him and his friends and how they interacted. There was also a story outside of them, something like which spurred them on, some kind of like threat. Whereas with this, it's about her kind of being estranged from her family, but estranged from Fisk. Again, spoiler, but he is alive. Like we saw him sort of being shot, what looked like in a fatal way in Echo, but it's been heavily advertised that he's in this and he's in Daredevil Reborn, and I think we could assume he was going to make it out alive somehow. But yeah. And it's about like, her deciding, does she want to go with Fisk? Does she want to kind of like keep rebelling against him? Is she tied to his fate because he brought her up? And that's great. But it's like, he doesn't come in until a bit into the show as well. and he's not really a threat to her at any point until right at the end. And it's just, I wanted more along the journey. It just feels like we just there wasn't enough story here. Now, what we got was great, but you needed a kind of like a driving force, something, some threat coming earlier on. And I wouldn't mind them coming together a bit earlier. Maybe the family accepts her a bit earlier. Maybe she breaks down some of the walls a bit earlier. You can then still have her later having a crisis of like, you know what, I could leave now, or I could stay and build these connections with my family. You can still play that drama, but it just seems so isolated and so disparate as a show that I really struggle with this one. I think it's still worth a watch. I think still, again, the performances are great, and I think it will lead to bear some fruit in the ongoing story, because I believe Echo's going to the movies or at least into another show going forward. She is going to be kind of popping up, which is great, and I do look forward to seeing her again. I just hope they serve her as a story better. The only thing I've really else got to say about this is, again, I like to put in a bit of my own perspective and a little bit of perspective from people who are neurodivergent. I do find it hard. I'm dyslexic, so my reading isn't as quick as some other people's, but I've also got ADHD, so the distraction is strong with me. So when I'm struggling to read things, sometimes I'll get more distracted. So I know this is like, I'm not expecting this to be solvable. Like, I get it. Of course, we want that representation towards the deaf world. And even in there's a pop which Echo makes that someone is like, oh, you can even be bothered to learn sign. Even if I did, it would be UK sign language, so I wouldn't even be speaking the same language. So I'm stuck with reading the subtitles, which just is a challenge for me. There's no way around that. I just thought I'd sort of say for people who are in the same or similar situation to me, that can be a challenge. It's not all in subtitles, but you do have heavy chunks which is all in subtitles, and especially when you're going through scenes with Native Americans speaking to each other, and then you're going to someone who's deaf, you know, having a conversation in sign. So there can be whole chunks where it's just in sign language or just in, sorry, subtitles. And I did struggle with that. It's just sort of like, it's a warning to know that that's how it is going in. So I had to watch an episode at a time for that reason. Again, that's not a problem. I just wish, especially seeing as I was watching an episode in time. I mean, I should have been sure at the end of the episode that I wasn't watching another one straight away. And I just didn't feel that drive. It was like, I'll get back to it. And so, yeah, this is fine. It's not unenjoyable. There's no real push to the story. And that's why I kind of missed with this. Yeah, and now we're on to Sci-Fi Weekender. So you're gonna have to bear with me a second while I get up the information. I hope you're all having a good night. I hope you're enjoying this little rant into the void which I'm having. Here we go. Here is the full lineup. And first of all, we've got some friends of the show on the bill. So we do have Level Up Leroy's returning, Professor Elemental, Madam Misfit, all friends of the show which have been on before. Hopefully I'll get them on soon again, maybe talk a bit about Sci-Fi Weekender. But we've also got a Lost Void voice guy, a hilarious comedian. And these are you kind of like headline acts. So we've got Peter Davison, of course, the Doctor, Neil Marshall, Mark Ryan, Michael Troughton, which not only is starred in Doctor Who, but also son of a Doctor, and is now playing the second Doctor on audio. Author Darren Shan, a young adult author. Peter V. Brett, Sarah Pimborough, and Lee Gill. It's a wonderful lineup. There's so much more happening. What I really love about this event is that there are not only wonderful acts during the day and wonderful interviews, some which I'll be doing. So please do come and say hi if you're going to be at the Weekender. I will be, conducting interviews on stage, probably dressed as a dragon, as is my wont. But also there's a wonderful nightlife. So yeah, it's acts like Madam Misfit. She'll not only be doing her electro funk performances, she'll be doing her BAPS, which is the British Aeronautical, I forget what P stands for, but Society. So anyway, it's basically her having lots of fun with people dressed up with fake wings. So basically they got cardboard wings on, and it's great fun. I'm really doing a piss poor job of explaining it, but please do check it out. Just type into YouTube Madam Misfit and just check out some of her stuff. Check out Sarah Miles. She actually released a single under that name earlier this year, and please do check out her BAPS. So anyway, that's really about it for the show. I hope you've enjoyed this little kind of sneak behind the curtain of what's coming up on the Doctor Squee Show and my trip to the theater and watching this on Netflix. Sorry, not Netflix, Disney Plus even. But that's about it. Yeah, it's really great to be back. I really look forward to bringing you some wonderful interviews soon. As soon as I know who they're going to be, I'll let you know about that as well. That could probably help. But please do join me every Thursday at 7 o'clock, the Doctor Squee Show on Facebook.com/the Doctor Squee Show, YouTube.com/Doctor Squee, or drsquee.com. And you'll find me out there. But thank you very much for watching. I'm Dr. Squee. That was my show. In a world where you can be truly anything, live like you've got two hearts. Please be kind. Also, ignore the credits. There won't be a Doctor Squee Show every Tuesday at 7 p.m. on SW20 radio anymore. As much as I love the station, I mean, please do watch it, but like just Thursday at 7 o'clock, that's you and me, yeah? Good evening.